The story follows Jinwoo, a hunter with the lowest rank who is considered the weakest of all hunters. In this world, enormous gates have appeared, releasing monsters, and certain humans have awakened powers to become hunters. Hunters can't level up or increase their rank, but can get stronger with better equipment. They clear gates called dungeons to obtain magical crystals for profit. Jinwoo is depicted as a disadvantaged character with a comatose mother and a missing father, leaving him to care for his younger sister. He is desperate for money to pay for his sister's education and his mother's treatment. During a raid in a dungeon, despite being armed only with a low-quality knife, Jinwoo enters bravely. He successfully defeats a goblin but gets injured due to his inadequate equipment. He is healed by a fellow hunter, Juhi, who questions why he persists as a hunter despite his apparent weakness. After the party defeats the dungeon boss, they discover a second entrance to another dungeon. This is rare and against the rules to explore without reporting to the Hunter Association, but the group decides to vote on whether to proceed. Despite the risks, Jinwoo votes to continue, driven by his need for money to support his family. During this time, Juhi expresses concern for Jinwoo's safety and flirts with him, asking him out for dinner. The group, driven by greed, enters a mysterious room in the dungeon, which is unusual because it contains a door and no visible monsters. Inside, they find statues and a large one seated on a throne, giving an impression of being watched. The group discovers an inscription with 3 commandments related to worshipping, praising, and believing in a god, with a warning that non-compliance will lead to death. Juhi notices the eyes of the giant statue moving, but Jinwoo dismisses it as imagination. However, when a hunter tries to escape, a statue suddenly comes to life and kills him. Panic ensues as the group realizes they are trapped in what seems to be a much higher-ranked dungeon than anticipated. Jinwoo, recalling his past experiences of overcoming dangerous situations due to his observation skills and need to find loopholes as a weak and poor hunter, warns everyone just in time to avoid a deadly laser attack from the large statue, managing to save Juhi. Despite this, many hunters are killed. Song, an experienced hunter, loses an arm in the attack and speculates they are in an S-rank dungeon. He advises against fighting and suggests finding an escape. However, another hunter, overconfident due to his recent guild contract, is killed while trying to attack the statue. Jinwoo deduces that the dungeon operates on specific rules linked to the commandments. By kneeling, he discovers that keeping their heads below a certain height prevents the statue from attacking. Following this realization, the group kneels and the statue's attack ceases. Despite this temporary safety, the statue begins to move, prompting Jinwoo to remind the group to adhere to the commandments, particularly the need to praise the god. The giant statue begins killing those who do not follow the commandments properly, like a man who prays to the wrong god and is crushed. Jinwoo, trying to survive, realizes that the statues with musical instruments spare those near them, but only one person at a time can be spared. While attempting to find safety, Jinwoo narrowly escapes death several times but loses his foot in the process. Juhi, a fellow hunter, exhausts herself healing him. The situation worsens when an altar appears and the group believes a sacrifice is needed according to the final commandment. Song, feeling responsible, volunteers. However, when more hunters attempt to flee, Jinwoo realizes that the exit is a test of faith and that escaping will cause the dungeon's deadly traps to activate. Despite his attempts to convince the others to stay, many betray him and leave. In a desperate fight, Jinwoo is severely injured and left for dead. As the last survivor, he is given a choice by a mysterious system message to become a player, which he accepts. Waking up in the hospital, Jinwoo is initially confused, thinking it was all a dream. However, he is visited by Woo Jin-cho from the Hunters Association, who informs him that he was unconscious for 3 days. Jinwoo learns that Song lost an arm in Juhi as traumatized, likely ending their careers as hunters. Only 6 people survived the dungeon, and mysteriously, no evidence of the deadly second rumor statues was found by rescuers, leading to disbelief and confusion about what truly happened. Jinwoo ponders over these events, wondering about the reality of his experience and the mysterious invitation to become a player. The aftermath of the dungeon incident unfolds. Every survivor of the dungeon recounts a similar story, and the bodies of the deceased are found, which leads the Hunter Association to not suspect foul play. However, Woo Jin-cho from the Hunter Association suspects that Jinwoo might have experienced a rare second awakening, a phenomenon where a hunter's power significantly increases. This suspicion arises because Jinwoo, known as a Weakie rank hunter, improbably survived a highly dangerous dungeon. Jin-cho tests Jinwoo's power level with a device, expecting a high score indicative of an A or S rank, but Jinwoo's score is a meager 10. Despite Jinwoo's initial excitement, Jin-cho concludes that Jinwoo is still very weak, and his assistant notes that even other E-rank hunters score higher than him. Confused by his survival, Jinwoo is left alone in his hospital room, contemplating his situation. He notices a mysterious screen with unread messages only he can see. When Jinwoo interacts with the screen, he recalls completing a secret quest titled Courage of the Weak during his near-death experience. Gina, Jinwoo's sister, visits him and expresses her concern and frustration about his dangerous lifestyle as a hunter. She even threatens to quit school and work if he continues. Jinwoo, realizing the importance of his sister in his life, feels regret. He inquires about the message box on the screen, which Gina dismisses as delirium. After Gina leaves, Jinwoo discovers that the screen is part of a system designed to help him develop his abilities, with a warning of penalties for non-compliance. He receives a daily quest called Strength Training has arrived, reminiscent of Saitama's regimen from One Punch Man, requiring him to complete a rigorous physical exercise routine. Finding it absurd given his hospitalization, Jinwoo ignores the quest and decides to take a nap. Meanwhile, Jincho reports to his boss that Jinwoo's power level remains low, alleviating concerns that monsters from the dungeon might have escaped into the real world. However, the mystery of the dungeon and Jinwoo's survival is marked as a special case for future investigation. Meanwhile, the leader of a top guild instructs Cha, an S-rank hunter, to act as an instructor in a B-rank dungeon for new recruits. This is part of an effort to improve the guild's teamwork and international standing, despite the fact that hunters' ranks are fixed. Elsewhere, a new gate appears in the middle of a road, drawing attention and anticipation for Hunter's arrival. Meanwhile, Jinwoo, still in the hospital, fails to complete his daily quest from the mysterious system, which results in him being transported to a desert scenario with a giant centipede for a penalty quest. He successfully endures this ordeal for 4 hours and then reappears in his hospital room, much to the surprise of the nurses. Jinwoo, motivated by these strange experiences, begins to take his daily quest seriously, engaging in rigorous physical training. His unusual behavior and rapid recovery raise eyebrows among the hospital staff. Jinwoo also discovers he has skill and inventory screens and receives a random loot box reward which contains a key. This key leads to an instance dungeon at a specific location, which Jinwoo sees as an opportunity to grow stronger. The world outside continues to be affected by the appearance of dungeon gates, including traffic delays due to new gate locations. Jinwoo visits his mother, who suffers from an incurable disease called Eternal Sleep Disease, linked to mana exposure since the gates appeared. Reflecting on his past struggles and initial awakening as a hunter, Jinwoo realizes that despite his initial weakness, he now has a chance to become stronger. He decides to use his ability points to increase his strength and heads to the location indicated by the instance dungeon key. Upon using the key, a portal to the dungeon appears and Jinwoo steps into it, ready to face whatever challenges lie ahead. He finds himself in a separate dimension within a dungeon, which he likens to a red gate scenario where the exit is blocked until he defeats the dungeon boss or uses a teleportation stone. Initially doubtful of his abilities due to past failures, Jinwoo is forced to confront and defeat 3 goblins. Surprisingly, he finds himself more capable than before, attributing this to his increased strength from the system's rewards. His victory is short-lived as he faces a stronger enemy, a wolf with a menacing jaw. Jinwoo's cheap knife breaks during the encounter, leaving him defenseless. He is terrified, hardly due to trauma from his previous dungeon experience, and struggles against the wolf. However, he notices his body feels lighter and more agile, allowing him to evade attacks and even land a powerful punch on the wolf. Despite his initial success, Jinwoo realizes the wolf is still stronger. He contemplates needing assistance but remembers his secret inventory. From it, he draws a magic sword, which he uses to slice the wolf in 2, leveling up in the process. Jinwoo is puzzled about how such an expensive item ended up in his inventory, but he doesn't dwell on it. His triumph is interrupted by the appearance of 2 more lycans. Struggling to lift his sword from the ground, Jinwoo panics as they approach. With a desperate effort, he frees the sword and manages to fend off one of the lycans, but the other catches the sword with its steel fangs. Jinwoo uses a kick to dislodge the lycan and defeat it. When another lycan appears, Jinwoo is unfazed as these monsters seem trivial compared to those he encountered in the secret room. However, this lycan senses Jinwoo's newfound strength and flees in fear. After defeating several lycans, he realizes he's leveled up to level 2 through actual combat, a more effective method than completing daily quests. His stats have increased, and he begins to understand the quantification of his abilities, particularly strength. Exploring the dungeon further, Jinwoo discovers that the beasts he defeats drop items, not magic gems as expected. Selling a wolf fang he obtained, he earns gold coins, though he's unsure of their real-world value. The dungeon's game-like mechanics become increasingly apparent, with limitations on purchasing items for new players. Faced with the daunting task of defeating the dungeon boss or finding a teleportation stone to escape, Jinwoo feels uncertain about his ability to defeat the boss alone. However, his confidence grows as he faces and defeats an entire pack of lycans, earning the title of Wolf Assassin. This intense battle leaves him exhausted, his sword nearly broken, highlighting the expendable nature of weapons in this world. Upon defeating the Lycans, Jinwoo acquires a teleportation stone, but he chooses to continue deeper into the dungeon, aiming to grow stronger. He speculates about the nature of the dungeon and whether it might disappear like a time-limited event in a game, feeling like a pawn in the hands of a higher power. Meanwhile, Juhee receives a call from the Hunter Association asking for her assistance due to a shortage of healers. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo continues to level up, noticing that the color of the names of creatures indicates their relative strength to him. He reaches a staircase and descends despite his weakening sword and doubts about his ability to defeat the awaiting monster. At the bottom of the stairs, the environment changes and he's suddenly attacked by a monster, caught off guard. His sword breaks upon impact, leaving him in a precarious situation. Despite his broken sword and initial struggles, Jinwoo is determined to prove his strength. He endures the snake's powerful attacks, adapting to its speed and ferocity. His determination is fueled by past ridicule and the desire to become stronger, a theme emphasized throughout his journey. During the battle, Jinwoo experiences a surge of power, symbolized by a blue aura and his hair standing on end. He discovers a weak spot in the snake scales, and despite being swallowed, he manages to crush the scale from within and ultimately defeats the boss. This victory leads to a significant level up and a reward, a dagger with enhanced capabilities compared to his previous weapon, as well as a vial of potent snake venom. Upon defeating the boss, the dungeon resets to its normal state, but Jinwoo finds the station deserted. He's approached by a soldier who informs him about a dungeon break involving a giant magic golem attacking the city. Jinwoo arrives at the scene to find hunters struggling against the golem due to its high defense and their lack of coordination and high rank. He notices Juvi, a healer he knows, still traumatized from her previous experience and unable to effectively contribute. Jinwoo, now more confident and powerful, decides to intervene. He uses his newfound strength to throw his sword with incredible force, breaking the golem's defense and enabling the hunters to defeat it. His action leaves the other hunters in awe and wondering about his rank, as they had struggled to make any impact on the golem. In Jinwoo's hospital, nurses gossip about how good-looking and cute he is, especially noticing his improved physique from working out. They're surprised by his muscles when he takes his shirt off, as he wasn't this muscular when he first arrived. One nurse interrupts his morning workout, apologizing for walking in on him without a shirt. She notices his muscles and wonders if he always looked so good. After reminding him of his discharge, Jinwoo assures her he's fully recovered. He thanks her for her care and prepares to leave. Meanwhile, on a news show, a hunter named Yuna discusses his daily training routine, drawing parallels to his past as a firefighter. Jinwoo watches the news, realizing he's late, and rushes out, reminding someone to be careful on their way to school. Jin-ae, noticing Jinwoo's improved physique, asks if he's been working out and jokes about his increased height. Jinwoo hands her an umbrella she forgot and playfully nudges her towards the door as she says goodbye. After Jin-ae leaves, Jinwoo heads to the living room and checks his daily tasks. He's done everything except running, deciding to do it later. Looking at his stats, he sees he has points left to allocate. Knowing he needs strength to deal damage, he also considers vitality and perception. He decides to distribute his points between strength, agility, and perception. His landlord calls about overdue rent, and Jinwoo assures him he'll transfer the money. They end the call with well wishes. Still unsure about a second awakening, Jinwoo realizes he can easily defeat goblins now, potentially earning a living. He scrolls through dungeons on his phone, pondering a re-evaluation for a higher rank, but decides against it due to rare second awakenings and media attention. He plans to keep his powers secret until he understands them better. A notification surprises him, and he quickly dresses and heads out. While completing his daily task, a man named Gongsuk approaches, recognizing Jinwoo as a weak E-rank hunter. Gongsuk invites him to join their dungeon raid, offering a commission but no spoils. Jinwoo joins despite concerns, signing a contract. Another hunter, Jinhul, introduces himself, and they head to a massive gate, skeptical of its C-rank designation. Inside, they find darkness and no monsters, unusual for a dungeon. Jinwoo explains luminescent stones, and their absence surprises him. Jinhul asks about these stones, and Jinwoo explains their purpose despite his confusion about dungeon-related gems and stones. He reassures Jinhul he'll get used to it. As they delve deeper into the cave, Jinhul is surprised by the absence of monsters. He questions Jinwoo if dungeons can be devoid of monsters, but Jinwoo hushes him. Jinwoo listens closely and detects hidden monsters, signaling the party to prepare for battle. Surprisingly, the insects move in unison towards any light source, indicating an insect-type magic beast. The party strategizes, uneasy about facing insects, and prepares to fend them off. Using his intuition, Jinwoo predicts their attack, positioning himself with Jinhul for protection. Dong-suk taunts the insects, drawing them in for the party to attack. Despite Jin-Ho's eagerness, he's advised to stay back as the others handle the fight. Witnessing their teamwork, Jin-woo feels impressed yet frustrated. After defeating the insects, Dong-suk questions Jin-woo's predictive ability attributed to intuition. They discover the insects were killed by something other than their weapons or magic, suggesting another predator. Jin-woo warns Jin-ho about his costly gear's vulnerability. Meanwhile, at the association gym, hunters hear an explosion caused by their guild master's workout, impressing them. Jin-woo discusses dungeons with Jin-ho, who questions Jin-woo's role in managing luggage in a large dungeon. Suspicious of their deal's generosity, Jin-woo remains uneasy, especially lacking a healer. Encountering more injured insects and finding valuable mana crystals, the party imagines their newfound wealth. Jin-ho suggests Jin-woo receives a share of the crystals, promising it after defeating the boss. Planning to move the crystals while the boss sleeps, Dong-suk instructs some members to retrieve tools, leaving Jin-ho and Jin-woo behind. They seal off the room, betraying Jin-ho and Jin-woo, who attempt unsuccessfully to break through. As the dungeon boss awakens, Jin-woo recalls his encounter with God, gaining confidence to confront the boss. Dong-suk second asks him why he's complicating the whole process of eradicating Jin-woo and Jin-ho. Dong-suk tells him they risk waking the spider if they do that, and that will prevent them from getting the mana crystals. He's sure that an E-rank hunter and a D-rank hunter won't stand a chance against the spider. He chooses to bide his time, waiting for the spider to tire itself out before they go after the mana crystals. There's concern about waking the spider if they have to break the seal again. Dong-suk suggests exploring paths above the cave as a backup plan. If the spider remains awake, they agree they'll have to take it down. Dong-suk considers salvaging Jin-ho's gear if they can't retrieve the crystals, given its value. He also decides to look up Jin-ho's family for funeral arrangements. Kyu-hwan worries that sealing the road might anger the spider further. Dong-suk questions whether Kyu-hwan can handle the boss alone, to which Kyu-hwan admits he can't. Jin-ho tries to dissuade Jin-woo from facing the boss, believing only higher-ranked hunters can handle it. Despite his recent upgrades, Jin-woo doubts his ability but remains confident in his strength. He eagerly rushes towards the spider, fully embracing the challenge ahead. Meanwhile, Gun-hee sits in his car feeling exhausted from his meetings. His driver suggests a sparring match to lift his spirits, which brings a smile to his face. Meanwhile, Jin-woo engages in a furious battle with the boss, dodging its attacks with precision. Despite his efforts, his dagger seems ineffective against the boss's tough armor. Jin-ho is amazed by Jin-woo's skills, questioning his E-rank status and suspecting him of being a false ranker. Jin-woo, feeling the pressure, continues to battle the boss, aiming for its weak spot with his dagger to turn the tide in his favor. He decides to aim for the spider's eyes, but as he charges, the boss unleashes acid unexpectedly. Jin-woo swiftly dodges, realizing the boss possesses more abilities than anticipated. Aware he can't sustain the fight, he opts to close in for a decisive strike. Utilizing his new dash skill, he leaps into the air, attempting to land a fatal blow, but his dagger's effect fails to activate. Understanding that a single strike won't trigger the dagger's power, Jin-woo attacks multiple times. Meanwhile, Jin-ho watches, wondering if Jin-woo can endure. Jin-woo accelerates toward the boss, pushing his limits, but fatigue sets in, halting his advance. The boss effortlessly knocks him aside. Lying incapacitated, Jin-woo narrowly avoids the boss's finishing blow by swiftly claiming his daily reward, instantly recovering. Jin-ho, thinking Jin-woo was struck, witnesses Jin-woo repositioning himself behind the boss, repeatedly targeting its weak spot with his dagger until the paralysis and drain abilities take effect, leading to victory. With the boss defeated, Jin-woo levels up and collects valuable materials, contemplating their worth. Jin-ho, impressed, offers assistance with the loot, surprising Jin-woo with his sudden formality. As Jin-ho continues mining, Jin-woo refreshes himself. Meanwhile, Dong-suk's party emerges from one of the tunnels, astonished to find Jin-ho and Jin-woo alive. Elsewhere, Gun-hee sparred happily with his driver, praising his prowess and offering guidance. Dong-suk's team, perplexed by the boss's defeat, assumes it was weak despite Jin-ho's gear. Suspecting Jin-woo's true strength, Dong-suk plots to eliminate him, aware of his potential threat. Jin-ho's allegiance shifts to Jin-woo, prompting Dong-suk to target him first. As Jin-woo prepares to confront them, an urgent message interrupts, causing Jin-woo to briefly lose focus and allowing Dong-suk to strike him with a powerful spell. Meanwhile, Hee-jin meets with friends at a cafe, discussing guild activities. She inquires about Gina's training with Miss Cha for the O-rank dungeon, marveling at Cha's effortless victory over the O-rank monster, a feat that left others struggling. All the trainees were astonished by how effortlessly she defeated the monster. One trainee, aspiring to be the next team captain, felt embarrassed by her display of skill. Gina inquires about the hunter aspiring to be the captain in Hee-jin's guild, to which Hee-jin expresses her dislike for him. Gina remarks on their luck for being in big-time guilds, mentioning rumors she heard about strike teams with suspiciously high fatalities. Jin-ho looks back at Jin-woo, who's knocked out. Gong-suk informs Jin-ho that Jin-woo has perished, much to Jin-ho's dismay. Jin-woo, on the verge of losing consciousness, notices the system urging him to eliminate those targeting him. Realizing the system's intent to keep him alive and strong, Jin-woo regains his resolve. He rises to his feet, surprising Gong-suk but relieving Jin-ho. Jin-woo decides to leverage the system to his advantage, prompting Gong-suk to mock him for his low rank. Remembering that the strong prey on the weak, Jin-woo challenges them and they ridicule him for being the weakest hunter in history. Undeterred, Jin-woo prepares to face them. Gong-suk's subordinate taunts Jin-woo, questioning what a low-rank hunter like him can do. Mockery turns to shock as Jin-woo swiftly incapacitates him with his dagger. Despite following the system's directive, Jin-woo grapples with the reality of taking a life but resolves to continue battling to grow stronger. As Gong-suk's team attacks, Jin-woo adeptly dodges and counters, swiftly dispatching each opponent. Gong-suk orders Q1 to attack, but Jin-woo outmaneuvers him and defeats him as well. With only Gong-suk remaining, Jin-ho observes Jin-woo's newfound strength. Gong-suk reinforces himself to withstand Jin-woo's attacks, underestimating Jin-woo's hidden strength. Jin-woo swiftly overwhelms Gong-suk, who realizes Jin-woo had concealed his true power. Gong-suk pleads for mercy, but Jin-woo shows no mercy, finishing him off. As the dungeon closes, they emerge, surprising an official with their survival attributed to Jin-ho's gear. Jin-woo receives a new skill, Murderous Intent, reducing all abilities by 50%. The official assumes Jin-ho's gear saved them while Jin-woo hid behind him, leaving Jin-ho nervously laughing. Jin-ho thanks Jin-woo for his support as it begins to rain. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the city, a formidable man prepares for action. Chief Woo receives a report of the 6 hunters who perished in the dungeon, noting the survivors' lower ranks. His assistant suggests investigating further due to Jin-ho's expensive gear and Jin-woo's involvement, recalling Jin-woo as the sole survivor from the double dungeon. His assistant informs him that one of the survivors who perished in the dungeon was Dong-suk. Chief Woo is concerned about Dong-suk's brother, Dong-soo, learning about his sibling's demise in the dungeon. Returning home, Jin-woo is welcomed by his sister, who is surprised by the souvenirs he brought. She questions if something good happened during his raid, to which Jin-woo responds ambiguously, mentioning his ability to save up for their mother's expenses. Jin-ha finds it unusual for Jin-woo to spend money, given his usually frugal nature. During dinner, Jin-ha inquires about his raid companions, noting his return without injuries, which triggers memories of Gong-suk and his squad. Lost in thought, Jin-woo mechanically opens a beer, reflecting on how he effortlessly defeated Gong-suk's group despite their strength disparity. He contemplates his newfound bravery compared to his past self, feeling remorseful for defeating human opponents rather than magic beasts. Jin-ha's concern snaps him back to reality, and he resolves to stop dwelling on the past, focusing instead on becoming stronger to protect his family. In his room, Jin-woo takes a sip of beer, only for the system to detoxify him, preventing any intoxication. He receives rewards from a side quest, granting health and longevity, realizing they stem from the double dungeon. Uncertain about many things, Jin-woo falls asleep, only to be awoken by a knock on his door from Jin-ha, informing him of a call from Jin-ho. Leaving to meet Jin-ho in a cafe, Jin-ho apologizes for the sudden request, expressing gratitude for Jin-woo saving his life and keeping the Gong-suk incident secret. Jin-ho reveals his intention to form an attack team and seeks Jin-woo's help. Jin-ho reveals his family's plan to hire an S-rank hunter as guild master while his brother serves as assistant. Knowing there are only 7 S-rank hunters in the nation, Jin-woo learns that Min, the S-rank hunter who hasn't joined a guild, has retired. Jin-ho intends to poach S-rank hunters from other guilds, but Jin-woo advises against it, warning of the potential consequences of making enemies of other guilds. Jin-ho admits his brother's lack of power and confesses his ambition to become guild master himself, believing his father will perceive him as stronger if he completes a raid with a low-level hunter like Jin-woo. He offers Jin-woo building plans as a reward for the raid, but Jin-woo dismisses the offer, wary of teaming up with someone who doesn't understand the concept of leveling up. Meanwhile, Gong-suk orders his assistant to gather information on Jin-woo and Jin-ho, furious at his brother's death. Laura, his assistant, tries to comfort him, but he's focused on obtaining the documents. He considers taking action against someone in another country, but is reminded of the legal consequences by Laura. Despite his frustration, Gong-suk orders changes to his schedule and plans to visit Jin-ho and Jin-woo. Jin-woo heads out for his morning routine, surprised when Jin-ha joins him. During their jog, he casually asks her what she would do with 30 billion won, observing her responses. Jin-woo's daily quest counts exceed the goal, prompting him to push himself further, even turning a daily quest into a secret quest. After accepting the reward for the secret quest, he chooses a blessed random loot box, which reveals a key to an S-rank dungeon. Intrigued by the possibility of obtaining the ingredients for the elixir of life, Jin Woo decides to clear the dungeon despite the potential dangers. He enters the dungeon slightly apprehensive but reassured by the presence of a teleportation stone. Despite facing the formidable Hellgate Cerberus, Jin Woo remains undeterred, knowing that he must continue to get stronger and level up. Utilizing his Wolf Assassin title for added strength, he attacks the Cerberus with his dagger, but his strikes prove ineffective against the monstrous creature. Even his murderous intent skill fails to affect the Cerberus, which retaliates with powerful attacks that deplete Jin Woo's health significantly. Struggling to withstand the onslaught, Jin Woo employs his full recovery skill to heal himself and continues to battle the Cerberus. Despite his efforts, the monster's rage skill amplifies its abilities, making it even more challenging for Jin Woo to survive. With his health dropping dangerously low, Jin Woo relies on his willpower passive skill for a damage reduction buff, allowing him to endure the onslaught while devising a strategy. Using his wit, Jin Woo creates a distraction with dust and takes advantage of the Cerberus's skill cooldown to replenish his supplies. He obtains exclusive healing potions and utilizes the venom of the water snake from his inventory to bolster his defenses. Despite the intense battle, Jin Woo remains determined to defeat the Cerberus, relentlessly targeting its weak spots until the monster finally falls. Having emerged victorious, Jin Woo levels up significantly and obtains valuable items, including a key to the Demon's Castle and the pattern for the Elixir of Life. Despite the dangers posed by the Demon's Castle, Jin Woo resolves to return when he is sufficiently powerful, recognizing the potential rewards that lie within. And that's the end of our video. To see more, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.